not minestrone soup, but minestrone pasta, and it uses tomatoes in as well. And then we have a couple videos that are not from this year, but from last year, and let's see, I think 2 of those also use tomatoes. So there's a lot of them that are on our YouTube channel, and we're posting them as blog posts on our website.
Oh, my gosh. I would have reacted in between all that because they sound so yummy, but I hope that you get some sound bites from other people, see? So it's hard for me to sit here and go, I can't say anything. Oh, the one with the okra, oh, my God. Huh?
I said that's a hard job
Diane?
as a host.
Oh, yeah. I enjoy it. Anything to give people a platform for what we're all trying to do is create, more food out there, getting down to the basics and so on. And Ball had sent me some of their recent new products, and so I was telling people about that earlier part of the program. And I did see last night late, and you might have already heard this, the Bayer company is wanting to purchase Monsanto for $62 billion. And see, by going through Europe instead of their base is in Europe, so instead of going through an office in the United States, they don't have to go through all the rigmarole of whatever. And so the EU has already given them the good graces. So I haven't had a chance to read the news feed today and see how that's going or whatever, but that could possibly change things. And I talked to their new PR person last week because we're trying to initiate another interview with them. They're very cautious, particular people. I've already interviewed them about bees, and I can have Dr. Becky Langer on again at any time. But we're just, it's going to be interesting because that's going to change the market again. It's all about
Change
the seeds.
Change is constant, right?
Yeah, change is constant. That's right. I talked to a fertilizer company, and they're trying to get their thing out to help people, grow more about fertilizing. So, but yeah, well, we appreciate you here this week again, and people can look at their website and give us the QT there on the website, where they can go to look at your information again.
AASwinners.com.
That is great. Well, you have a great week, and glad that the snow is not there in the Chicago area. We appreciate down here in the southern Indiana, western Kentucky, western Illinois area. We appreciate it, too. So thank you, ma'am. We appreciate all that you do with the different hybrids and all the different plants and, of course, the flowers, the gorgeous flowers that are out, and giving them your seal of approval. We appreciate all y'all do. And that's Diane Blasek, who's Executive Director, yes, ma'am, of the All-America Selections. Now, we've got coming up here in just a few moments, we've got Casey is in the house. He's Casey Tomato. We're going to go ahead and find out what he knows about tomatoes and what he can give us for some good to Community Garden Revolution. My name is Mary Huckel, and we've got Casey Tomato, who is in the house. I'm very excited because he is like a guru of tomatoes, and we're very excited that he's going to come on every so often and be like our guru for tomatoes. And he works on creating new tomato varieties and unique qualities, evidently. And he's in Missouri, but he's at the cross line there, the border there of Kansas, where his actual plants are. Keith, are you in the house there?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good afternoon. So, Keith, tell us, how you got started in all this and why, and then tell us what are the best trends that you're seeing coming across this year for tomatoes.
Okay. About myself, I'm a lifelong gardener. I fell in love with it because of my grandparents. I've been working with tomatoes since 1993, roughly, but I've been growing them longer than that. I had problems in the 80s in one of my gardens, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And when I finally diagnosed what it was, I was like, I should breed that out of tomatoes so I won't have that problem anymore, which was kind of a naive thought. But eventually I ended up going back to school, and I went to K-State and got a degree in port therapy and community garden and working with vegetables. And when I was there, I bugged the breeder for a job, and I ended up working on melons and beans. And his background in grad school happened to be tomatoes, and he said, well, if you're going to do breeding work, you want to work with tomatoes. So I ended up going to NC State and working with a famous tomato breeder there. His name is Dr. Randy Gardner, and he produced a lot of tomatoes and that are widely used throughout particularly the eastern United States. It's the Mountain series in particular. And they are a typical grocery store tomato. A lot of them were picked and gassed. And when I got there in 93, I was like, well, where's the flavor? And when I was there, another professor introduced me to a guy named Craig LaHouliere, who is NC Tomato Man, and he's written a couple of books. But he looks at the USDA stores of old tomatoes, what we call heirlooms now. And I got introduced to him. He happened to live down the street from my wife's grandparents. But we hit it off, and he introduced me to a lot of things. And it just became, well, why aren't I taking these things that the universities create with high disease resistance and putting it with these old heirlooms to create flavor? So that's kind of what got me started and doing what I do.
You mean that? Okay, so I always thought, maybe I'm wrong. Okay, so I always thought that if a tomato was fat, juicy, plumpy, red-looking, and looked so ripe that you hit it that you wanted to splurt, kind of thing, that was the most flavorful time. So you mean that they actually can create, or there are certain ways that tomatoes grow that do create the flavor to it? Is that what happens?
Absolutely. Flavor is complex in the tomato, and I don't want to get overly scientific here. I don't know your listener base, but genetics is very important. Your breeding stock, your family, where you come from have an influence. But there are environmental factors, how much sunlight receives, how much heat it receives. That's why it's complex working with flavor, because year to year that changes. So you have to kind of look at things and go, is what I'm really seeing here a result of the genetics, or is it a result of just this environment? So you have to keep testing year to year. But you can significantly improve flavor. And what I've found, and others have backed up with research now, is when you make a hybrid, in corn they talk about hybrid vigor. The term is heterosis. So when you cross two parents and then the offspring creates this hybrid vigor, and in corn they particularly talk about yield. So the yield increases and you get this stronger, more vigorous plant. Well, you have heterosis for flavor in tomatoes and melons too, so that when you find the right parents and you cross them together, their offspring significantly better. It'll knock your socks off. You don't even have to think about it when you put it in your mouth. It's right away. It's like a wow. But that's a special condition. You have to look for that. You have to do a bunch of crosses and find where that is. And that's kind of what I'm interested in exploring. And I think some other people are starting to hit upon this. Dan Barber at the Stone Farms Inn in New York has recently started a seed company, and they're looking at this. I see value. I came background with produce and restaurants originally, and I see a value to chefs of like, hey, this is different. This is different than you've been getting out there. And so there's these other groups like the Culinary Breeding Network in the Pacific Northwest that are introducing chefs, farmers, and breeders together. So I get this material in the field, and I look at it as a breeder, and I go, hey, that's interesting, but, it's not what I'm after. But if a chef sees that, they're like, maybe that's exactly what they want. Or they can look at it and go, that's something I can work with. Because, we all get our mindsets, but when you introduce different minds, you get a better result. So, I can create really sour tomatoes, and there's some people who want really sour tomatoes. But, I need somebody to say, hey, that's something of value. Let's work with that. Let's take that forward. Because it does take quite a bit of resources and time to develop something.
Whenever it is that we go to a restaurant, let's go to the culinary part, and I see it more at a restaurant than I have when I purchase something during the wintertime, a tomato, let's say, from some other country. Why is it that when you cut into it, that it has that, maybe it's because it's been frozen, I don't know, it has like a white, pinkish kind of look inside. It almost looks like we're eating a wax or a replica of a tomato. What is that about?
Well, part of that's the breeding. In the effort to create a market, year-round market, and to supply the market of fresh tomatoes, breeders have for years worked with firmness traits so that they don't crack, so that they ship well. But the other issue with a lot of fresh market tomatoes coming out of different parts of the South and Mexico in general, they tend to pick them green, and right before they start ripening, and then they stick them in chambers and they gas them with ethylene gas, and it gets them to ripen when they want them, so they can hold them longer for market shift changes, shipping changes, but it's not ripening fully on the vine, and it has the genetics inside of it that make for a firm fruit, which when they selected for that, they moved away from some of the flavor characteristics. So what I'm trying to do is introduce that flavor back into it. And it's tricky because, people really do want a perfect round red tomato when they buy at the store. And the only thing that's changed that is farmers markets, because people are going, oh, there's these heirlooms and they taste really good. And they may not look so great on the outside, but boy, they sure pack flavor. So there's kind of been a shift in thinking to get away from that. I have to have a perfect round red ripe. But the big companies, they've done studies, and, people say they want something, tasting better and stuff. But when it comes down to it, they put cameras on them and they don't know it. They're picking the round, right, perfect things from the store. But that's created the situation where the flavor is just really not there at this point. But there are people working on it. There are people working on it in Florida.
Oh, Lance, I can't believe all the information you have. This is wonderful. Well, I've called you the right name, the guru of tomatoes. So I appreciate you being on today. I sure do. And we're going to get the opportunity to speak with him again at some point whenever he has the time. The door is always open because tomatoes, just like the people ahead of time when they heard that you were going to be on, she changed the subject from being about social media and videos. She said, that's our number one interest that people have is tomatoes. Can we talk and focus on that more instead? And I said, okay, sure.
There's
a
lot of interesting stuff coming. There's a lot of interesting stuff coming, and there's a lot of interesting stuff that hasn't been exploited or used. And that's what I've been trying to do. So you can see.
Well, we appreciate it. So whenever it is that you can come back on, you drop me a line because I've got to get ready to go, and drop me a line and say, hey, Mary, I've got some time today, and we'll have back Casey Tomato here in the house. It's my honor and pleasure. I'm just enthralled by the information that you've got. That is so cool. So we're gracious for the opportunity to have. We've got to find you a sponsor so that for sure you can be on here anytime. So, we appreciate, and it has been my honor to talk about tomatoes with Casey Tomato with the All America Selections. And thank you to the Ball Corporation, the Jarden Home Brands, for sending me all these wonderful new jars that I got in the mail yesterday, as a matter of fact, so we could do it for our show. We appreciate that. And do look up on their website, www.freshpreserving.com, for their latest that they have as far as mason jars. And you're going to be just blown away. What an awesome day today. Well, thank you, folks, for listening to our show. It has been my honor and pleasure. You're listening to Community Garden Revolution. We're going to be back again next week. So this is Mary Hugo saying, have a great community garden day.